All right, let's get right into it. There are some mysteries that just stick with you. And for more than 60 years, this story, coming out of the frozen heart of the old Soviet Union, has been one of the most chilling, one of the most unsettling out there. It's a terrifying story about 9 lives lost to, well, to something unknown on this remote, desolate mountainside. So today, we're going to try and unpack the Dyatlov Pass incident.
Really, it all boils down to this one single, terrifying question. I mean, think about it. These folks weren't amateurs. They were seriously experienced winter hikers. And yet, something made them leave their only shelter without even properly dressing and just run out into a brutal, deadly blizzard. So, what on earth could have been more dangerous than just staying inside their tent?
And right there, that's the first clue that just makes no sense. When the search party found the tent, they realized the hikers hadn't even bothered to unzip the flap to get out. No, they were in such a hurry, such a panic, that they sliced it open from the inside. It's just chilling. Whatever they were fleeing from, it felt like it was right there with them.
Okay, so before we can even get into all the wild theories, we have to picture what the rescuers found. We need to put ourselves on the slopes of this mountain, a place called Koletsyakhl, which ominously translates to Dead Mountain. This is in the Ural Mountains, way back in February of 1959. So at first, no one was really panicked. The group was supposed to be back around February 12th, but, delays on these kinds of treks happen all the time. It wasn't until the 20th that their families started getting really worried and demanded a search party be sent out. And then, on the 26th, they found the tent. And that's when they knew something was terribly wrong. But the full horror of it all, that wouldn't come out until months later, when the spring thaw in May finally revealed the rest of the story. I mean, look at this. Every single detail from the campsite just screams that something is wrong. They left everything, all their gear, their coats, their shoes behind, and their footprints. They showed the group walked calmly down the slope. They didn't run in a panic. And maybe the most important clue of all, there were no other tracks. None. No sign of anyone else, no evidence of a fight. It was just 9 sets of footprints, heading away from safety, seemingly by their own choice. So before we dig deeper into the evidence, I think it's really important we talk about who these people actually were. Because this wasn't some group of unprepared kids looking for a thrill. No, they were the exact opposite.
Yeah, see, this wasn't just some weekend camping trip. This was a grade 3 expedition. At the time, in the Soviet Union, that was the highest, most difficult rating you could get. It was a serious test of skill and endurance. This group, they were skilled, they were experienced, and they'd prepared for absolutely everything the brutal Ural winter could throw at them. Or so they thought.
And here they are, a group of friends, mostly students and recent grads, all from the Ural Polytechnical Institute. Their leader was Igor Dyatlov. He was only 23. And what's really tragic is that there was supposed to be a 10th member, Yuri Yudin. He had to turn back early on because he got sick. Just a simple twist of fate, but it saved his life, and you can only imagine it haunted him for the rest of it. All right, this is where the story takes a turn from mysterious to truly gruesome. Because the official investigation, the forensic evidence, well, it only made things 100 times more confusing. The condition of the bodies pointed to 2 totally different ways they died, and some injuries that were, well, they were just completely inexplicable. Okay, so check this out. The first group of bodies they found, their deaths seemed, tragically, pretty straightforward. 6 of them, including the leader Igor Dyatlov, had officially died of hypothermia. They just froze to death out there. Simple as that. But then, the last 3, the ones they found months later at the bottom of a ravine, they died from something else entirely, something incredibly violent. Just listen to this quote from the medical examiner at the time. It really gets to the absolute heart of the puzzle. He was completely baffled. The force that crushed the ribs and skulls of these 3 hikers was, as he put it, like being hit by a car. A massive, immense force. And yet, and this is the craziest part, there were no external injuries. No bruises, no cuts, nothing. And the list of just plain bizarre findings just goes on and on. You have this massive internal trauma, but no external signs of a fight. One of the victims, Lyudmila Dubanina, was found missing her tongue and her eyes. Another, Semyon Zolotaryov, his eyeballs were gone. And if that's not weird enough, they found traces of radiation on some of their clothes.
So you can see why the official conclusion from 1959, that they died from a compelling natural force, well, let's just say it didn't exactly satisfy anyone. Yeah, so a conclusion that vague, it's like an open invitation for speculation, right? It created this huge vacuum, and boy, did people rush to fill it with theories. Everything from the somewhat plausible all the way to the completely paranormal. So some of the early ideas, well, for a little while, people suspected the local indigenous Mansi people, but that was thrown out pretty fast. There was just no evidence. Then there's the military weapons test theory, which got a lot of traction, especially because other people reported seeing strange orange lights or orbs in the sky that night. And here's a really interesting one. Infrasound. The idea that the wind howling over the mountain created this super low-frequency sound that our ears can't hear but our bodies can feel, and it can literally trigger intense, irrational terror. So for decades, all these wild theories were swirling around. But more recently, science has started to point to an explanation that's a bit more down to earth. Though, trust me, it's no less terrifying. This is what's known as the slab avalanche theory, and here's how it would have played out. First, the group digs into the snow to set up their tent, right? But they don't realize they're on an unstable slab of packed snow. Hours go by, more snow falls, the wind blows, and finally, crack. The slab gives way, but it's not a huge dramatic avalanche. It's a slow, heavy slide that starts to crush the tent. That noise, that pressure would be terrifying. It explains why they've cut their way out in a blind panic. Then, in the total darkness and the blizzard, they get disoriented and head for the trees. The group splits up. Some freeze to death trying to start a fire, others try to get back to the tent and don't make it. And those awful crushing injuries, the theory goes that the last 4 fell into a ravine and then tons of snow collapsed on top of them, delivering that car crash force. But here's the thing, even this, the leading scientific theory, it's not a slam dunk, not at all. I mean, on the one hand, recent computer models show that this kind of avalanche was definitely possible. It explains the damaged tent and why they had to get out fast. But on the other hand, the critics have some really good points. The slope wasn't very steep, a spot that experienced hikers would normally consider safe. Rescuers didn't find the usual signs of an avalanche. And remember those footprints? They showed people walking, not running for their lives. So yeah, the debate is far from over. So where does all of this leave us? Well, we're left with a story that's become so much more than just a tragic accident. It's really turned into a modern myth, one that's kept alive by all the missing pieces and the questions that just won't go away.
Now, it's true that in 2020, Russian officials reopened the case and then officially closed it, saying an avalanche was the cause. End of story. For the government, the book is closed. But for a whole lot of other people, researchers, family members, and thousands of online sleuths, that conclusion just feels too neat. It feels like an attempt to put a lid on a mystery that really does not want to be solved. Just think about that number. For more than 65 years, this incident has completely captivated people. It's terrifying. And I think it's because it taps into this really deep primal fear we all have. It's not just about freezing to death. It's about the fear of the unknown. And you know, maybe those original investigators back in 1959 were actually onto something. They couldn't put a name to what happened, so they just called it a compelling natural force. And that phrase, it's kind of perfect, isn't it? It perfectly captures that unsettling feeling at the heart of this case. It's a phrase that basically says, we don't know. And maybe, just maybe, we never will. And really, that just leaves us with one final thought to chew on. The Dyatlov Pass Incident, it's so much more than just an old, unsolved case. It's a story that pushes right up against the limits of what we can understand. It makes you wonder, why are we so fascinated by stories that don't have a neat ending? Maybe it's because they're a reminder that there are still forces out there in the world, forces both compelling and natural, that are completely beyond our explanation.